AP News in brief at 6:04 p.m. EDT Trump corrects his quote, says misspoke on Russian meddling. Washington, AP, blistered by bipartisan condemnation of his embrace of a longtime U.S. enemy. President Donald Trump sought Tuesday to clarify his public undermining of American intelligence agencies, saying he had misspoken when he said he saw no reason to believe Russia had interfered in the 2016 U.S. election. The sentence should have been, "I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, or why it wouldn't be Russia," instead of "why it would," Trump said, in a rare admission of error by the bombastic U.S. leader. His comment came amid rising rebuke by his own party, about 27 hours after his original, widely reported statement, which he made at a Monday summit in Helsinki standing alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin. "I accept our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place," Trump said Tuesday. But he added, as he usually does, "It could be other people also. A lot of people out there. There was no collusion at all." Moments earlier, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell issued a public reassurance to U.S. allies in NATO and Europe with whom Trump clashed during his frenzied Europe trip last week. "The European countries are our friends, and the Russians are not," McConnell said. Republicans join Democrats in condemning Trump's remarks. Washington, AP, bizarre, shameful, disgraceful. That's the swift and sweeping condemnation directed at President Donald Trump on Monday after he sided with Russian President Vladimir Putin during a stunning appearance in Helsinki, and that's just from the Republicans. Lawmakers in both major parties and former intelligence officials appeared shocked, dismayed and uneasy with Trump's suggestion that he believes Putin's denial of interfering in the 2016 elections. It was a remarkable break with U.S. intelligence officials and the Justice Department. And just as alarming for some, Trump also put the two countries on the same footing when casting blame for their strained relations. John McCain, RS, called it one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president in memory. Senator Ben Sasse, RNEB, called it bizarre. Sen. Jeff Flake, RS, called it shameful. And Sen. Lindsey Graham, RSC, tweeted that it was a bad day for the U.S. relations sinking further after divisive Trump to Brussels, AP, after a week of the worst barrage of insults yet from U.S. President Donald Trump. The European Union is looking westward toward the White House less and less. Making it worse, Trump spent Monday cozying up to EU adversary Vladimir Putin in an extraordinary chummy summit with the Russian leader in Helsinki. Never mind. In an age when Trump has made political optics all important, on Tuesday the EU struck back. The EU leaders were in the Far East and Japan and China looking for the trust, friendship and cooperation they could no longer get from a century-old ally. Trump's embrace of Putin and the EU's Asian outreach highlight the yawning rift, widening more by the day, in a transatlantic unity that has been the bedrock of international politics for the better part of a century, as countless graves of U.S. soldiers buried in European soil bear witness to Trump's abrasiveness and "America First" insistence had been a given even before he became president. Europe's increasing resignation to letting go of the cherished link to the White House is much more recent. App newsbreak, Twitter suspended 58 million accounts in 4Q New York, AP, Twitter suspended at least 58 million user accounts in the final 3 months of 2017, according to data obtained by the Associated Press. The figure highlights the company's newly aggressive stance against malicious or suspicious accounts in the wake of Russian disinformation efforts during the 2016 U.S. presidential campaign. Last week, Twitter confirmed a Washington Post report that it had suspended 70 million accounts in May and June. The huge number of suspensions have raised questions as to whether the crackdown could affect Twitter's user growth and whether the company should have warned investors earlier. The company has been struggling with user growth compared to rivals like Instagram and Facebook. The number of suspended accounts originated with Twitter's Firehose, a data stream it makes available to academics, companies and others willing to pay for it. New figure sheds light on Twitter's attempt to improve information quality on its service, its term for countering fake accounts, bots, disinformation and other malicious occurrences. Such activity was rampant on Twitter and other social media networks during the 2016 campaign, much of it originating with the Internet Research Agency, a since-shuttered Russian troll farm implicated in election disruption efforts by the U.S. Special Counsel and congressional investigations. Suspensions surged over the fourth quarter. Twitter suspended roughly 15 million accounts last October. That number jumped by two-thirds to more than 25 million in December. Immigrant children describe hunger and cold in detention Santa Ana, California. AP, wet and muddy from their trek across the Mexican border, immigrant children say they sat or lay on the cold, concrete floor of the immigration holding centers where they were taken. It was hard to sleep with lights shining all night and guards kicking their feet, they say. They were hungry, after being given what they say were frozen sandwiches and smelly food. Younger children cried in caged areas where they were crammed in with teens, and they clamored for their parents. Toilets were filthy, and running water was scarce, they say. They waited, unsure and frightened of what the future might bring. I didn't know where my mother was, said Griselda, 16, of Guatemala, who entered the U.S. with her mother in the McAllen, Texas, area. I saw girls ask where their mothers were, but the guards would not tell them. The children's descriptions of various facilities are part of a voluminous and at times scathing report filed in federal court this week in Los Angeles in a case over whether the Trump administration is meeting its obligations under a long-standing settlement governing how young immigrants should be treated in custody. Dempsey Kavanaugh is Obamacare threat, but law likely safe. Boston, AP, the heated debate over how Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh would vote on the Affordable Care Act might not matter. As long as 5 past defenders of the health care law remain on the nation's highest court, the odds tilt in favor of it being allowed to stand. Some Democrats are warning that President Donald Trump's design could spell doom for the statute, even as some conservatives are portraying Kavanaugh as sympathetic to former President Barack Obama's landmark legislation. But where Kavanaugh would vote if he joins the Supreme Court is less clear than both sides suggest, according to an Associated Press review of the appeals court judge's decisions, other writings and speeches. Kavanaugh could get to weigh in on the health care statute if the High Court takes up a lawsuit brought by Texas and 19 other states. Those states are seeking to strike down the entire law because the Republican-backed tax overhaul removed fines for not having health insurance. The Trump administration recently said in that case that it will no longer defend the ACA's protections for people with pre-existing medical conditions, nor its limits on how much insurers can charge older customers. Obama delivers veiled rebuke to Trump in Mandela address. Johannesburg, AP, in his highest-profile speech since leaving office, former U.S. President Barack Obama on Tuesday denounced the policies of President Donald Trump without mentioning his name, taking aim at the politics of fear, resentment, retrenchment, and decrying leaders who are caught lying and just double down and lie some more. Obama was cheered by thousands in Johannesburg's Wanderers Stadium as he marked the centenary of Nelson Mandela's birth by urging respect for human rights, the free press and other values he said were under threat. He rallied people to keep alive the ideals that the anti-apartheid activist worked for as the first black president of South Africa, including democracy, diversity, gender equality and tolerance. Obama opened by calling today's times strange and uncertain, adding that each day's news cycle is bringing more head-spinning and disturbing headlines. We see much of the world threatening to return to a more dangerous, more brutal way of doing business, he said. Many state lawmakers accused of sexual misconduct run again. Atlanta, AP, allegations of sexual misconduct against Kentucky lawmakers have become so common that the state house has seemed more like a frat house. 7 have faced accusations, including 4 who settled secretly with a female legislative aide. Voters responds, mostly, keep them in office. Of the 5 lawmakers up for re-election this year, 3 easily made it through their party primaries and will be favored to retain their seats in November. The other 2 chose not to run. It's not just Kentucky. An Associated Press review finds that 25 state lawmakers who have been accused of sexual misconduct are running for re-election or another office this year. Of those, 15 have already advanced to the November 6 general election. 7 did not even face a challenger in their primary. Cassandra Cooper, who filed a sexual harassment claim against a former Kentucky lawmaker in 2013, wonders why voters would re-elect public officials accused of sexual misconduct, or simply choose to ignore the allegations. With Trump's endorsement, Roby tries to fend off challenge Millbrook, Ayla. AP, an Alabama Republican congresswoman who once distanced herself from President Donald Trump over his Access Hollywood comments, is now relying on his endorsement as she fights off a surprisingly strong GOP challenger. Representative Martha Roby is facing Democrat-turned-Trump Republican Bobby Bright on Tuesday, trying not to become the 3rd congressional Republican to lose her job this primary season. From the outside, the race shouldn't be close. Roby is a 4-term incumbent in deep red Alabama. Trump and Vice President Mike Pence have endorsed her, and her Republican opponent supported Nancy Pelosi when he served as a Democrat in Congress. But as is often the case in the Trump era, the conventional rules of politics do not apply. Roby's survival depends on whether voters are sufficiently convinced she's on board with Trump's agenda after criticizing him in 2016 when he was caught bragging about sexually predatory behavior in the infamous Access Hollywood tape. BlackFine to step aside as Goldman CEO, Solomon to take over New York. AP, another Wall Street veteran of the financial crisis, is stepping aside. Lloyd Blackfein is retiring as CEO of Goldman Sachs after 12 years at the helm of the storied investment bank. Blackfein will give way to David Solomon, a longtime Goldman executive who has been considered Blackfein's chosen successor since earlier this year. Solomon will assume the CEO role from Blackfein on October 1 and become chairman of Goldman in 2019. The succession announcement came Tuesday as Goldman announced a 44% jump in second-quarter profit from a year ago. The performance was largely driven by the investment bank's core franchises, advising companies on mergers, acquisitions and other deals, and its trading business. A longtime Goldman employee who rose through the ranks in commodity trading business, Blackfein took the reins of Goldman Sachs in 2006, not long before the Great Recession and financial crisis. Goldman and its competitors accumulated billions of dollars of toxic assets on their books: bad mortgages, collateralized debt obligations and other illiquid assets. In the darkest days of the crisis, it was thought Goldman Sachs may not survive. By late 2008, some of Goldman's key rivals, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns and Merrill Lynch, were either bought in distressed sales or, in the case of Lehman, went bankrupt. Blackfein moved quickly to save the firm from its near-death experience, tapping the Federal Reserve's emergency program set up to keep banks from failure. Eventually and reluctantly, Goldman took money from the $700 billion TARP bailout program, which it repaid. He pushed the firm's trading desks to aggressively take positions through the market's volatility, and in 2009, only a year after the crisis, Goldman reported record earnings driven largely by trading revenue. Copyright 2018 The Associated Press. All rights reserved. This material may not be published, broadcast, written or redistributed.